Alright, so here we are on Module 11, and I've opened the start file as always, the ILEX 11-1 from our textbook start files, and I've opened it in Excel and we're ready to go. What we'll do is we'll first of all save this as the proper name for today, which is 11 Northeast. And you'll notice it has a bunch of different tabs which we'll use throughout this recording. Alright, so first of all, let's go to cell D2. And in this case, we want to type technical. Okay. We'll hit tab, we'll go to E2 and we'll type senior recruiter. And we'll hit the enter button on the formula bar to stay in that cell. And with E2 highlighted, and in the editing group on the toolbar at the top here, we want to click on fill. And we'll go flash fill. And what Excel does in the background, it looks in the relationship between corresponding or adjacent cells. And in this case, senior recruiter is exactly like what's after the comma. And it says, okay, wherever there's other text, we're going to take that same application and look at what's after the comma in column C. Similarly, if we click on D2, we'll go up to fill under the editing button, and we'll go to flash fill. Same thing, is it pulls in the first part up to the comma. So finance and accounting, creative, etc. And we want to take the position that it populated here. We're going to move it. So we clicked on the bottom and we dragged it over to E1. And in D1 we'll call this division. And we want to take D and E, we'll highlight D and E, and let's auto-fit them to make them wider so it fits everything. So we auto-fit D and E, we'll save our work, and we'll continue on to page 11-4. While we're on F2, we want to we want to do the concatenate function. So you can either type equals concat to start the formula, or as in the textbook, if you go to the formulas tab, and we want to click in the text drop down, and you'll see concatenate as one of the options. Okay. The text box 1 we want to be B2, so we'll click on B2. We'll hit tab to go to text box 2. We'll put a space, so I hit the space bar, tab, A2. So now we're going to put first name, space, last name. We'll click OK. Oops, that didn't work. I apologize. All of a sudden my Excel is screwed up. Let me stop for a second. Alright, we'll try that again. Equals concat. And we said B2, comma, and the other way you can do this if you're typing is give a quote, space quote. That is the space, and 2. So again, if I hit the function button, it's the same pieces. It all works the same. So now we've got Jean Reagan. Alright, let's fill this down from F2 to F13. So we'll go to the bottom right hand corner like we've done in previous weeks. We'll fill that down. You'll see that it pulls in the various first and last names. And then we want to widen F, so I'll auto-fit F to make sure everything fits. And we'll go over to G2. Another text function that might be helpful is proper. So if we go to text, you'll see proper is one of the options. This is what do you want to properly format. And in this case, let's click the little up arrow, move this out of this way, we'll click F2. Okay, we'll bring this back, we'll click OK, and proper means it'll capitalize the beginnings of words. Okay, we're going to take that down to G13. And we'll widen that again. So now we've got properly capitalized names. In H2, in this case, we want text join. So under text, we'll scroll down, we've got text join. Delimiter, we want spacebar. In the ignore empty box, we want just the default, so we'll tab away from there. In text box 1, we'll drag this out of the way, we'll click D2. Okay. In text box 2, we'll click on careers, and we'll click OK. So in this case, you can see it adds the space, so it's a technical career. So on H2, we'll drag that down to H13 and pulls in the relative information. And we'll auto-fit that column again. Now if we highlight G2 to H13, we'll go to the Home tab. In this case, we'll click Copy, and we'll go to column I, and we want to go Paste, and we want values only. We'll hit Escape. And we want to highlight A to H. We'll go up to the cells function. We'll delete those columns. And then we'll highlight A and B. So now we've got a properly listed file with the first and last name capitalized and what type of career they're in. Should look like on page 11-5, figure 11-4 at this point. Moving on to page 11-6, we're going to move on to a different tab. So we'll move over to the Boston tab. We'll zoom in so you can see some of this data a little easier. And the first thing we want to do is to sum based on some conditions. So over in I2, we want to go formulas. We want a math and trig function. In this case, we want to sum if. We want to add values if it meets a certain criteria. So hit sum if. And on the range, we want to look up the divisions. So we'll click on C2 down to 65. The criteria, if I scroll back up, it has to match H2. So it's looking in the divisions for anything that matches technical. And if so, what it's going to do, if you click in sum range, is add the commissions. So E2 to E65. Now, I will say it's very important when you're doing sum if, average if, count ifs, etc., is that your range and your sum range, or your average range, need to be corresponding. So if you start in row 2 in the range, you need to start in row 2 in the sum range. If you're off by one row, your calculations will be off by one row, and therefore you'll have incorrect results. We'll hit F4 on both the range and the sum range to make them absolute like we talked about before. And we'll click OK. So now we've got 85255 as the if summary for technical roles. Let's go to J2, and now we want commission averages. We want more functions in this case. It's statistical, and we want average if. So just like we did before, we'll click on C2 to C65. We'll hit F4 to make that absolute. We'll click on criteria. We want it to be H2. We're looking for technical. And average range, again, we're looking for rows 2 to 65. F4 to make those absolute. And again, make sure that those correspond, both top and bottom. Otherwise, it'll be really messed up. In this case, we'll click OK. And now we've got 4736 and 39 cents as the average. If we highlight I and J, cells I2 and J2, we'll go to the bottom right hand corner, and now we want to fill down to row 5. Now in this next case, we want to give you an example where we're looking for technical full-time. So if you notice, technical is in one column and full-time is in a different column. Okay. So in this case, we need a double sum if. And how you do that is a function called sum if s. So we want to go to math and trig functions. We scroll down. You'll see sum if s. That means there's more than one if statement. So first of all, the sum range, it's backwards. What do you want to add? And then you tell it what it's based on. So we'll go to E2 to E65. Put F4 to make that absolute. And now we go through their criteria. So the first criteria is, let's look at C2 to C65, go F4, and in that column, we want it to be technical. Okay. Another tab. D2 to D65, F4 to make that absolute. And the criteria in this case is full dash time. Okay. I will say sometimes it's easier if you have technical and full time here. You could use this criteria when linked to the contents of that cell. You could go equals left of this cell, so many characters. You could split this into two different cells and have the criteria to link to, maybe it's over here hidden in L6 and M6. Now for this example, we're just typing in the values. So tab from there. So we'll click OK. Now, in this case, we want to click on, with I6 highlighted, we want to take the fill handle. We'll take that over to J6. But in this case, we want to edit this. Instead of sum if s, we want the average if s. So we don't have to go through all the different parameters. Change it to average of f. If s, we now have 2933. Don't worry about formatting, commas, etc. But at least you've got through the different formulas. The other set of functions is we want to find values based on certain conditions. So we're on to page 11-8 of the text, and if you click on cell H9, we're going to insert the minimum if s function. So it's the lowest technical full-time, so technical and full-time, so therefore we need multiple parameters. And we want to go up to the insert function button. In this case, we can just type the one that we're looking for, minimum fs, or you could just type it in the box or in the cell, and you pull up the function arguments. In this case, we're looking for the minimum commission in column E, so we'll click E2 to E65, F4 to make that absolute. First range then, we'll click on the division, C2 to C65. We can do F4 to make that absolute as well. In the first criteria, again we'll type technical. Second criteria then is we want to look for full-time position, so that's criteria range D2 to D65. Make that absolute. And our criteria is full-time. We'll click OK, and it pulls in 1,311. We want to, okay, so H9, we want to then copy. So I'll hit Control C in my example. And we want to paste it on H11. Okay. And in this case, instead of the minimum, we want the maximum. Okay, so we'll change the word min to max. Okay, and the other part is, it says technical consultant. So in this case, we will need to replace the word full-time with consultant. And it doesn't actually want me to do that. Interesting. So what you can do, just to follow this example through, is you replace the word full-time with consultant. You'll get 8997, but I just realized there's an error in the textbook where it doesn't tell us to replace that. So you might have had 9268, as we see here, which is based on full-time, yet the description says consultant here. So whichever you have, it's walking you through the example on how to use this formula. We'll highlight both H9 and H11. What I did is I clicked on one, hold the control button, you can click on the other cell, so we're selecting multiple cells. And in this case, we're going to go home and format them as currency with 2 decimal places. Pardon me. Alright, next is we're on page 11-10 where we want to construct some formulas using named ranges. So we're on the Boston tab. We're going to highlight C2 down to C65. We're going to go to the Formulas button at the top, and we want to define a name. So we'll click Define Name, and ask what we want to call it. In this case, we want to call it Division. And the scope list, we want that title only to work on the Boston tab, not throughout the workbook. We'll click OK. Next one is we want to click on D1 to D65, so we've included the header on this. And in this case, let's just show you another function, or another way to create names is create names from selection. In this case, the top row is the name for everything below it. So just two different ways to give name ranges. Click OK. If we click the Name Manager button under the Formulas tab on the ribbon, you'll see now that I have division, which is rows C2 to C65, and position type, based on this, is D2 to D65. We'll hit close, and now we'll go over to cell K2 to use those names. We want to go to the Formulas bar, we'll hit More Functions, we'll want a statistical function, and in this case we want to count if. So count if, count the number of placements if it matches technical. So in the range box, if we type the word division, you'll see that it automatically pulls in what that division range actually contents are. We'll hit Tab, and we'll click on H2 for the criteria, and we'll click OK. You'll have 18 placements. While you're on K2, go to the bottom, right hand side with your mouse, and we're going to fill that down to row 5. So we have 18, 18, 13, and 15. And let's click on K6. In this case, we want to start typing the word equals count. You'll notice a bunch pop up, and if you recall, just like multiple parameters, we have the sum if s, average if s, we have a count if s, where it has multiple variables to look into. So we'll double click on that to pull the formula in, and then we can do a couple things. You can click the formula bar at the top, or you can actually type it right in the cell. In this case, if you go to Use in Formula, up on your Formulas ribbon, you'll see your different named ranges. So in this case, we want division first, and we want to type comma, quote, technical, unquote, double quote I guess I should say, comma, use in formula, we want to look for position type, comma, with a double quote equals full time, double quote, and then close bracket. If you click the little function argument bar here, just to show you what it looks like if you do it this way, you'll have division, technical, position type, and full time. So we'll click OK, and we have 9 that it counts, which is the correct answer in this situation. Alright, we'll continue where we want to look at consolidating worksheet data. So let's look at the Northeast summary. Zoom in again. So in this case, we want to click on cell B4, and in this case we also want to add Boston, Philadelphia, and New York, a specific cell off of all 3 tabs. So we'll hit the Auto Sum button in the function library. Without moving your cursor, click the Boston tab, press and hold your Shift key, click on New York, and you'll see your formula now has quote Boston, New York, unquote, exclamation mark. That means it's going to look in all of those tabs from start to finish wherever you click next. Click on I2, so it's Boston, New York, I2, and we'll click the Enter button. So it's looking at cell I2 of all of those tabs from Boston, New York. And for example, if I drag Philadelphia out of it, right now it's 153488. If I drag that out, you'll see it changes. So it's looking at for everything within the range of start to finish workbook or worksheets. It's very important to know. Let's copy that down to row 7. So we'll fill that down to B7. Alright, we'll click on B9. And we want to do something different. We're going to click on the Data tab. And we want to consolidate. It's in the Data Tools, which is right here. There's a Consolidate button. In this case, what do you want to add? We want the sum of a bunch of stuff. So we'll click the up arrow, and now we can go through and click what we want to add. So we'll go to Boston, and we want E66. So in this case, it's E66 with the expand, add. Now it says, what else do you want to add? We'll click the little up, Philadelphia. We want E61, expand, add. You'll see that we're slowly adding different cells. We'll click the little up arrow. We'll click New York. We want E63. So you see how they're in 3 different cells. We got 63, 66, and 61. So we can't just add the 3 sheets across in the same cell reference. So this consolidate function helps do that. In this case, do we want to keep links? And yes, we do. So create links to the source data, so as information changes on the other tabs, it'll update automatically. And we'll click OK. Now if you look, all of a sudden it added this little plus sign and added a few rows. So if you hit the plus, it shows you the details that add up to that total. So that's a useful function of the consolidate function. Let's, okay, so we're going to leave that expanded. In A9, we're going to call that Boston. Enter. New York. Enter. And Philadelphia. Enter. Okay. So we have a total of 5, 10, 6, 18. We'll hit save. And we'll continue. So one of the other functions that may be helpful from time to time is how to audit a worksheet. And what that means is you're going to follow formulas through to see where there may or may not be errors. So let's click on the Expenses tab. I'll zoom in for a second. And you see right now there are some errors in here. So we want to click the Formulas tab on the ribbon. And we want to go to cell N7, so where we have our first error. And you'll see that it says value is there. What you want to do is up under Formula Auditing, there's error checking. If you click on that, it'll give you an idea of where the error may or may not be. So right now it says N3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6. And you'll notice that N3 has text. So no wonder why you're getting an error. So, in this case, we want to edit in the formula bar. We can go up to the formula bar, delete the N3 reference. So now we have N4, 5, and 6. Hit enter, and you'll notice that it fixes that result accordingly to be 132, 192. We'll close that, and we'll continue. Let's go to N5. And click error checking, and what it's saying is it's inconsistent with the other formulas. So in this case, we want to trace the precedence. So we'll close this, go back up to the top, trace precedence, and you'll notice that it's looking for February to December versus it should be all January to December. We'll hit remove arrows. And in this case, what we can do is a few things. We can click the copy formula from above, and it pulls down the relative result. Close that, and now if I hit trace precedence, sorry, I hit dependence, not trace precedence, you'll see now it results in January to December, okay, because it copied the formula above. Next, let's click on 05, and let's evaluate this formula in this case. And what we want to do is evaluate, and it looks at 37,898. Hit evaluate again, and it says it's calculating 0 for N8. We'll hit close, and you see it's divided by 0. click on 04, and you'll notice that there was no absolute function tied to the total row. So we'll click on the N7, type N4, and now we can go and fill that formula down accordingly. Now we don't have the errors. Save our work. Alright, the last function we'll talk about in this module is the payment function. So if we go to the loan tab, I'll blow this up. What it is, we're given 3 different scenarios of loans from different lenders, different terms, interest rates, and number of months. And we want to determine which may be the best alternative to take. So let's go to cell F4. In this case, it's a financial formula. We'll scroll down. We're looking for the payment function. So this calculates your monthly payment based on a set of parameters. And in this case, we've got a bunch of data to include. So our rate is based on cell D4. Now, the important part to remember, I don't know if you recall this from other classes, is this interest rate is per year, but the monthly payment's per month. So we have to divide that rate by 12 months. The number of periods are the number of months. So I'll click on E4. Present value, we'll start with clicking on B4. And you may recall from, again, another class, you always need to start with a negative present value. We'll come back to that in a moment. So B4, we'll click OK, and it shows a negative payment. So that's what I'm saying is Excel, because you're loaning the money, you're borrowing the money, you're going to pay it back, it's always the opposite result. So we'll go back and edit this formula to be negative B4. So now you've got a monthly payment of $5,193.98. We want to fill that down to the rows below it. So we have our different monthly payments. And then our total payments would just be as simple as typing equals the term of months, E4, times F4. And our total interest, excuse me, would be your total of payments, G4, minus your original loan amount. Obviously the difference would be your interest paid over the term. We'll highlight G and H4, we'll go to the bottom right and we'll fill that down. And you'll see that our interest varies dramatically, between $123,000 in the first case to as little as $40,000 in the last case. Now you as a business would then go and determine, can I afford 15 grand a month over 3 years in order to save some significant interest? Or would I rather pay a little bit less per month, pay more interest, but have a lot longer term to pay it off? So that's an internal business decision. And that's all we have for this week.